This is the battle between two classes, the 1% who own nearly everything in America already, and the other 99% who are struggling to keep their head above water. It is a class war. How exactly did the elite class destroy middle-class America? It began with an economic theory called neoliberal or free market economics, which in short seeks to do 5 things. 1. Eliminate unions and workers' rights in favor of pure market forces by suggesting labor unions and sharing in gains was a communist ideal. 2. Reduce public expenditures and privatize public resources. 3. Reduce regulations regarding the movement of and use of capital. 4. Reduce taxes on the wealthiest individuals and corporations. 5. Eliminate the concept that community and public works are good in favor of raw individualism. Taken together, this was known in our public policy and media arena as trickle-down economics. If you make the rich fabulously wealthy through these means, they will generate jobs and growth and prosperity for the little guys as well. Ronald Reagan was the tip of the spear. Just 8 months into his presidency, he fired 12,000 members of the Air Traffic Controllers Union for staging a strike. This set the entire tenor of a new war by wealthy capital owners against the middle class. It was sold under the idea that weakening labor was good for the economy and would open up a vast export market. But in fact, the primary export was American jobs.
Ask yourselves why the government's policies have caused 4 out of 5 of you to have to lower your standard of living. We have got to stop sending jobs overseas. To those of you in the audience who are business people, pretty simple. If you're paying $12, $13, $14 an hour for factory workers, and you can move your factory south of the border, pay $1 an hour for labor, hire a young 25, that's assuming you've been in business for a long time, you've got a mature workforce. Pay $1 an hour for your labor, have no health care, that's the most expensive single element, making a car, have no environmental controls, no pollution controls, and no retirement, and you don't care about anything but making money, there will be a giant sucking sound going south. Sucking sound going south. Sucking sound going south.
First lesson of Reagan 101 was lowering taxes, So it didn't work. It just didn't work.
Look, NAFTA did not do what many had hoped.
I mean, we bounced back from a recession in the mid-'80s, but I don't think that was because, you know, taxes were cut for rich people. We've tried that before, and we demonstrated, I think, conclusively, supply-side economics does not work.
Reagan was only the start. During his 2 terms, the top marginal tax rate on the highest incomes dropped from 70% to a mere 28%. But all the while, expenditures and deficits rose dramatically. Runaway deficits zoomed from 2.5% of GDP to over 6%. The debt grew more during these 2 terms than in all previous American history. Here was the formula. Cut taxes on the wealthy, but increase expenditures and deficits, which would have to eventually be paid by the middle class. That is exactly how wealth is transferred upwards in America. The assault didn't end with Reagan. Reagan's trickle-down theory was advanced seamlessly by George H.W. Bush, William Clinton, George W. Bush, and now Barack Obama. In all of these administrations, these same policies were vigorously pursued, and it is important to note that party affiliation made no difference whatsoever. Mr. Clinton, for example, immediately pushed through the NAFTA agreement at the start of his presidency, creating an outflow of good-paying manufacturing jobs that continues to this very day. Ross Perot warned that this outsourcing to third world countries would create a giant sucking sound from the speed of exporting our best jobs overseas. But President Clinton's crowning achievement for the wealthy was the trade agreements with China, which would take a broad axe to the remaining manufacturing sectors in the USA. The Shenzhen Walmart Express was launched, and over the next 10 years, the U.S. would create less than 5% of the new jobs needed to keep the nation employed and prosperous.
I think when plants close down, there's an automatic assumption sometimes that it's because of trade. But I think the right thing for America is to continue to tear down the trade barriers and sell more American products, to try to lift up labor and environmental standards abroad. And then when people are dislocated here, if they lose their job from technology or people don't buy the products anymore or trade, whatever the reason is, we need to do more and more quickly for them.
This 30-year assault on working families has left a devastating trail of inequity. This chart shows that for 90% of the workforce, wages have been substantially flat since 1980 in spite of tremendous productivity gains by American workers. But productivity will never lead to higher wages if jobs can be exported to lower-wage countries with no penalty. Wages have been flat, but prices are anything but flat. The cost of all key components of the family budget have risen dramatically. Housing and health care costs have skyrocketed, and employers have steadily increased the cost of health insurance premiums to employees. Real pension plans have been eliminated in favor of roll-your-own 401k plans, into which many companies contribute nothing. The result of flat wages and rising prices has resulted in an unprecedented family budget crisis. Even with two parents working, families have found themselves pedaling backward and in all too many cases sinking below the surface. To keep families afloat and to keep them consuming, another major economic innovation was introduced by the elite ruling class: easy credit. By eliminating restrictions and regulations in lending practices, banks created an ocean of easy credit through the broad expansion of plastic credit cards with interest rates previously categorized as criminal and illegal. In order to keep people spending and consuming at a rate which would make them feel prosperous, they had to use this new easy credit. Americans could no longer expect to buy things with what they earned. Their growth stagnated to a virtual stop, so they had to begin spending future earnings to support their families. In the years between 1980 and 2008, the amount of revolving high-interest credit carried by Americans has increased from $5,000 to $24,000. The interest on this debt is accumulating faster than workers can earn the money to pay for it. And with the latest round of banking deregulation, interest rates have been arbitrarily raised in many cases to over 30%. Coupled with new freedoms to attach outrageous fees for late payments or return checks, the banks have American workers in a hole from which they will never be able to climb out.
How about the $135 billion in interest? How about the bait and switch tactics of these major credit card companies, the usurious interest rates that are beyond any kind of pale of conscience or reason?
Our standard of living is still falling and will likely never recover to the pre-trickle-down days of the post-World War II era. Items that cannot be outsourced, such as homes and food, are consuming more of our budgets than ever. Items like clothes, computers, TV, and appliances are cheaper because the people who make them offshore are living in conditions even worse than American workers. These non-durable goods do not appreciate or add to our wealth. They eventually hit the landfill as they lose all value. These gadgets and conveniences make us feel richer for a short while, but they do not grow in value and are no measure of prosperity. The best measure of wealth is to measure appreciating investments. If we look at wealth properly this way, the American middle class is broke and living paycheck to paycheck. Home foreclosures and bankruptcies are skyrocketing off the charts. There's a shrinking number of good jobs, and getting one usually requires a college degree. Millions of college students are graduating with $50,000 to $100,000 in student loan debt. Even with a good job, these debts won't be paid off for 15 or 20 years. The system is getting our children in debt before they even have their first paycheck. And yet, if you tune to your TV to the nightly news, you'd simply think we're in a recession, a typical cycle from which we'll soon recover. The truth is that we've had repeated episodes of bubbles followed by recessions, and there will be another bubble somewhere down the road. But the increasing wealth gap shows that the top 1% of America, the ruling class, makes all the money from those bubbles. When they are through raiding the IRAs, the 401ks, and middle-class corporate shareholders, and milking them for bonuses and outlandish salaries and benefits, they leave the empty shells bankrupt, in many cases to be bailed out by the middle-class tax dollars. The long-term trend, looking not just at one bubble, but looking past bubble after bubble, shows one constant trend. The rich have become richer, and everyone else is getting poorer. This is the quick summary, then, of the status of the American middle class. Wages are down, good-paying jobs are disappearing or gone, costs are up, and everyone is bogged down in high-interest debt. People are buying groceries and gas on Visa cards and taking out loans to send their kids to college. Banks have given free rein to charge whatever interest rates they like on any balance any person has accumulated. The manufacturing jobs have been shipped to China and the technical jobs to India, while you are expected to purchase their output at your local Walmart store. Let's be blunt, you've been screwed. In part 2 of this series, we will tell you some of the things you can do to fight back. Until then, don't despair.